So Bloomberg says that 1 out of 4 Canadians will be forced to sell their homes if interest rates continue to rise. Are you worried about being one of them? Well, let's talk about it right now. What's going on, everybody? My name is Andrew, and today we're going to talk about how the rising interest rates in Canada will be affecting the average real estate investor. And I'm going to also share with you the 5 things that you can do to protect your property as well as come out on top in this kind of market. The reason for this video was actually a recent article that was released by Bloomberg with the headline of 1 in 4 homeowners will have to sell if interest rates rise more. And this was based on a recent debt survey that was done by Manulife Canada. The thing about an article like this is it's obviously a pretty sensational headline, and it does get a lot of people who are in the real estate market or looking to get into real estate thinking a little bit, right? Is this a good time to get into the market? Is this a good time to sell? What should I be doing? And where is this information coming from? Now, this article does mention 5 significant points that we need to consider about the real estate market. It starts off by saying that 1 out of 5 homeowners believe that they can no longer afford the houses that they own. It also states that nearly 25% feel that they will be forced to sell if rates continue to rise, and that nearly half of Canadians say that they will struggle with unexpected expenses. They also note that 40% of Canadians feel that wages aren't keeping up with inflation, and that 80% of Canadians think that there is an affordability crisis. It is important for us as real estate investors to properly evaluate these articles and see where they're coming from. We have people reading headlines, less people reading the article, and even fewer people than that reading what the article is actually based on. And people actually go about making decisions in their real estate careers or about their life just by reading headlines. But we are savvy real estate investors, so we're not doing that. We want to look at where this information is coming from. The survey was conducted across Canada on a population size of 2,001 people. And that doesn't actually surprise me. Do people really do surveys nowadays? I mean, I know that I haven't done a survey in a very long time. Do you know anybody who's done surveys? Do you do surveys yourself? Are you a homeowner? And take these things into a little bit of consideration. Canada has a population of roughly 3.8 million people, out of which 2/3 of them own their own homes. So when you tell me that you have done a survey with a population size of 2,001 people, which actually comes out to roughly 0.0005% of the population, and that this is a statistically significant piece of information that you're giving us, you have derived that 1 out of 4 Canadians are going to be forced to sell based on that sample size, and I'm going to evaluate this information accordingly. It doesn't mean that these things are going to happen. So just remember that when you're reading these headlines, that you actually look into the article a little bit and see where they're deriving their information from, because it might not necessarily make a lot of sense and they might be stretching things a little bit. But that doesn't mean that this article doesn't make any really good points and things that we ought to consider. So with that being said, let's talk about what we can do to address the concerns of the article as real estate investors. First thing you want to do as a real estate investor is understand how to budget for rising interest rates. And in order to budget, you have to really understand exactly how interest rates affect you. A lot of people will worry and say that interest rates are rising. What am I going to do? But not a lot of people will think about what this actually translates to in a true dollar value. In a previous video, we discussed how every 0.25% of an increase in your mortgage will make a difference to your monthly payments of about $100 a month. And that is assuming that you have an $800,000 mortgage. If your mortgage is less, you can just calculate accordingly. So $400,000 mortgage means you have an increase of $50 for every 0.25%. If you bought at 2% interest on a variable mortgage and we're now pushing 4%, you can expect an $800 a month increase to your property bills. And that is not an insignificant amount, but by understanding a specific problem and identifying a specific number, it will help you to approximately budget your expenses and anticipate in the cost the future decisions that you're going to have to make. Whether you make the decision to eat out less, or you want to go on cheaper vacations, or maybe you want to subscribe to a cheaper gym. The point is that once you know exactly what the number is that's making a difference to you and how interest rates will be rising, you can make a decision as to how you want to budget accordingly. And that's the first thing that you want to do. Now, the second thing I want you to consider is the versatility of your asset. People forget this sometimes, but real estate is a tangible product that you can work with. It's not something that is completely out of your control. So even if we're talking about your own primary residence, I've seen people ride out hard times by simply renting out 1 or 2 of their bedrooms in their homes. And that's not saying that you have to do that, but it is an option. It's something you can do. Or maybe you have an unfinished basement that you have enough funds to renovate and build an in-law suite. That is also something that you can rent out. And if we're talking about having a full rental property, one of our clients had these old tenancies that he had never raised the rent in for the last 5 years. And all he did was had a simple conversation with his tenants, explaining to them that they were going through a difficult difficult financial time and asked them if they would be willing to pay more on the monthly rent, because the landlord basically said that if we don't make some arrangement, I will be forced to sell the property, and he doesn't know what that's going to do to their tenancy with a new landlord. And they both agreed to make some concessions. Tenants paid a little more rent, the landlord was able to afford it, there's something to be done there, everybody's able to make things work. The point that I'm trying to make is that with real estate, you have several options. Now, the second thing we want to talk about is how to hedge with your mortgage. Now, if you don't know what the difference is between variable and fixed mortgage rates, check out one of our previous videos where we explain the differences between variable and fixed. If the fluctuating market is stressing you out and preventing you from eating, sleeping, or enjoying your life, you may want to consider switching to a fixed rate mortgage. Even though it might be more expensive, it is something that will allow you to budget long term. Sometimes when people choose their mortgage, they usually base it off of interest rate speculation. And I don't generally think that that is the best way to go, because when choosing a mortgage, what you should actually be basing your decision on is what is your risk tolerance. What is it that you're able to work with or manage? And even if you're locked in, some providers like Scotiabank have step programs where you can basically switch from a variable to a fixed without a penalty. But there's all kinds of new programs that are coming out all the time. So basically call your bank, ask for options, and see what it is you can do. The fourth thing to consider is refinancing or a second mortgage. Now, I know that might actually seem a little counterintuitive, especially with rising interest rates, but a lot of the time it's all about budget. And if you think about things, if you're in a position where you're forced to having to sell, it is better to refinance the property. And depending on your situation, you might be able to open up a HELOC or a second mortgage to carry you through this correction. And the name of the game is to make sure that you can ride out the storm until the market recovers. And I know what some of you are thinking. What happens if the market doesn't recover? Then we're all kind of in a hard place. We never want to be timing the market, and asking too many questions along the lines of what if this or what if that is just going to really complicate things for us and make us unable to make proper decisions. You want to be taking into consideration measurable empirical data so that you can be making educated decisions. For example, Canada is expecting 432,000 new immigrants this year, and even a higher number for 2023 and more so for 2024. So you can take that information and make your own conclusion as to whether or not you think that real estate is going to start going back up again or whether it's going to level off. But either way, take actual data and make your own decisions accordingly. But now I want to move on to the fifth thing, which is doubling down. For those of you who like to play stocks, you understand the idea of not selling during the dip and maybe buy even more if that is an option for you. Now, you can find some really good deals right now. You know, you might not be wanting to sell, but maybe that means this is a good time to buy. Product that we used to find unfinished and unrenovated, you can actually now find them for the same price, newly renovated and in good condition. So if you can refinance a property and go and buy another one that can actually offset some of your expenses, you might find yourself in a really good place. Remember, the general question that people sometimes ask is now a good time to buy? And that is actually the wrong question. The question that you ought to be asking is, what type of properties thrive in this kind of market? And understand that when it becomes harder for people to buy homes, it forces people into the rental market. And what does that do for rental properties? It makes rental properties more valuable. It makes them command higher rents, it makes them better on the refinance, and overall it can produce you a higher cash flow. So even if you have higher mortgage interest rates, hopefully the rents can offset that. So take all these things into consideration and use these options to your advantage. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, we're going to leave some information about us in the description below. As always, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you on the next one.